As the battle raged on, even the intervention of the right envoy failed to turn the tide in her favor. Yeon-Myeong's momentum was unshakable, his movements calculated and devastating. Frustration boiled into fury as Suntae realized that conventional techniques were utterly ineffective against him. If she wanted to overcome this relentless force, she would have to resort to her most devastating abilities. With a sharp resolve, Suntae began channeling her inner energy, summoning the devastating Hell Demon Fire Ant ultimate technique. The air around her grew heavy with a menacing aura, the power she wielded crackling with raw intensity. As Suntae channeled her ultimate technique, the sheer magnitude of her energy became undeniable. The surrounding air grew dense with malevolence, crackling with the force she had summoned. Her intentions were clear. This attack would leave nothing untouched, reducing the entire battlefield to a wasteland if unleashed. Even her allies could sense the impending devastation, the overwhelming energy teetering on the edge of control. Yeon-Myeong's sharp gaze fixed on her, his mind racing to assess the situation. The destructive potential of Suntae's technique was undeniable, and if it were to strike, the consequences would be catastrophic. Yet, his focus remained unshaken as he calculated his next move with precision. He knew he had but a single chance to act before the technique was unleashed. With a steady hand, Yeon-Myeong prepared his dagger, channeling his own energy into the blade. His movements were swift and deliberate, his concentration unwavering as he unleashed his counterattack. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from his dagger, cutting through the chaotic air with surgical precision. Before Suntae could release her ultimate technique, the beam struck her squarely in the chest. The force of the attack was both precise and overwhelming, piercing through her defenses with an elegance that belied its destructive power. Her energy dissipated instantly, the momentum of her ultimate technique vanishing before it could wreak havoc on the battlefield. Suntae staggered, the sudden and decisive strike leaving her stunned and vulnerable. The tides of the battle shifted yet again, Yeon-Myeong's calculated intervention sparing the battlefield from certain ruin and reaffirming his mastery in the heat of combat. Yong-Seon's eyes widened in sheer disbelief as he witnessed his companion, Suntae, helplessly fall to Yeon-Myeong's precise and overwhelming assault. The scene unfolding before him defied reason, each moment pressing deeper into his growing fear. His body trembled as the realization sank in. This opponent was no ordinary warrior. The cold precision and unyielding resolve Yeon-Myeong displayed were beyond anything Yong-Seon had ever encountered. A whirlwind of thoughts churned in his mind. Could such a figure truly exist within the righteous faction? Was this young man one of those unparalleled prodigies, the kind born once in a millennium, whose very presence could rival the leaders of established sects? Panic gripped him, and his voice cracked as he demanded answers, though his words were laced with desperation. But Yeon-Myeong's response was as cold and merciless as his attacks. His declaration cut through the tension like a blade, revealing his identity without hesitation. The young lord of the Sichuan Tang sect and the alliance leader of the Righteous Heaven Alliance. The weight of the revelation struck Yong-Seon like a hammer. His thoughts spiraled, piecing together the implications. This was the venomous sword dragon, the name whispered with both fear and reverence in the martial world. But before his mind could fully process the gravity of the situation, a sharp and deadly energy materialized before him. The sword energy flashed with lethal intent, slashing through the air and striking him down in an instant. Yong-Seon collapsed to the ground, lifeless, his panic and disbelief extinguished as swiftly as they had arisen. As the battlefield quieted, Yeon-Myeong turned his attention toward Jaeon, his expression betraying both concern and regret. The sight of the seasoned warrior standing firm despite his grievous injury weighed heavily on him. Jaeon's severed arm was a stark reminder of the price paid in their struggle against the demon sect's forces. Jaeon, however, stood with unwavering resolve, the bleeding from his wound already staunched. There was no bitterness in his demeanor, only a quiet pride in what they had achieved. He regarded Yeon-Myeong with admiration, acknowledging the young leader's pivotal role in breaking the demon sect's power by vanquishing both the left and right envoys. Despite his personal loss, Jaeon's hearty laughter echoed with a sense of fulfillment, as though the sacrifice of his arm had been a worthy trade for their victory. Yet Yeon-Myeong's regret lingered. He couldn't help but replay the events in his mind, questioning whether he could have acted differently to prevent Jaeon's injury. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, and his tone carried the guilt of a leader striving to protect those under his care. Jun's response was resolute, his words carrying the wisdom of a seasoned monk who had seen countless battles. He dismissed the younger man's self-recrimination, emphasizing the greater importance of preserving the lives of their allies. His firm tone underscored his indomitable spirit. Losing an arm was a small price compared to their ultimate mission. Until the demon path was eradicated, his resolve would remain unshaken. Yeon-Myeong felt a sense of reassurance in Jaehoon's unwavering determination. The elder's words were a reminder that even in the face of loss, their fight carried a higher purpose. Quietly, Yeon-Myeong reflected on their circumstances. Despite being scorned as a fallen righteous sect by others, he felt fortunate to stand alongside someone like Jun, a beacon of strength and fortitude in their relentless pursuit of justice. Jun's gaze shifted toward the lifeless body of the demonic envoy, his expression shadowed by unease. Despite the foe's death, the oppressive aura lingering in the air refused to dissipate. It was a phenomenon that defied the natural order. Ordinarily, the energy of the deceased would vanish with the end of their life. Yet here, the ominous presence persisted, its malevolence palpable. Yeon-Myeong stood beside him, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings as he confirmed the unsettling observation. Even in death, it seemed, the killing intent of the demonic envoy clung stubbornly to the battlefield, like a lingering curse. Determined to resolve the anomaly, Jaehoon stepped closer to the fallen figure. The seasoned monk spoke with calm conviction, preparing to draw upon the sacred techniques of Shaolin to cleanse the lingering impurity. These secret Buddhist arts, revered for their purity, were capable of dispelling ordinary demonic energy with ease. Confident in their efficacy, he began to focus his spiritual energy, intent on purifying the corpse and neutralizing its malevolent aura. As Jaehoon prepared to act, a sudden, ethereal presence materialized near Yeon-Myeong. The Imugi spirit, its serpentine form coiled with tension, appeared without warning. Its voice carried an urgent tone, resonating directly with Yeon-Myeong's consciousness. The spirit's warning was clear and immediate. The source of the ominous energy was not the lifeless body but the sword clutched in the envoy's grasp. As Jaehoon knelt, steadying himself to channel the purifying force of Shaolin's sacred energy, an ominous shift in the atmosphere struck without warning. A surge of otherworldly energy erupted from the source, its violent wave threatening to engulf the unsuspecting monk. The attack came with terrifying speed, but Yeon-Myeong, ever vigilant, moved faster. In a seamless motion, he grabbed Jaehoon from behind and shielded him, his dagger cutting through the malevolent force. The weapon glowed faintly as it neutralized the oncoming energy, leaving a crackling void where the attack had dissipated. Steadying himself, Yeon-Myeong assessed the situation, his sharp gaze locked onto the sword emanating the ominous energy. Despite the force he had unleashed with his strike, the malevolence clinging to the weapon refused to vanish. It pulsed with a vengeful rhythm, as if feeding on the very attempts to subdue it. Jaehoon, rising with some difficulty, observed the cursed weapon. His expression grew grim as he pieced together the nature of the threat. The moment his purifying energy had approached the sword, the dark aura had reacted violently, not only resisting the cleansing force but consuming it. This was no ordinary malevolence. It was an energy born of vengeance, imbued with a sinister purpose. The aura radiating from the sword carried an unmistakable intent, destruction aimed at even the most sacred and righteous forces. It was a manifestation of Buddha-killing energy, the likes of which Jaehoon had rarely encountered. The weapon pulsed, daring them to act again, as the weight of the moment settled heavily on the battlefield. The energy surrounding the cursed sword intensified, its malevolent force growing more hideous by the moment. The air seemed to ripple with an unnatural power, as if the very fabric of reality was being warped by its presence. Yeon-Myeong, his senses heightened to the extreme, watched in disbelief as the energy began to take shape, coalescing into something far darker than he had anticipated. A form was emerging, a twisted manifestation of the sword's corruption. A growing sense of dread settled over the battlefield as the shape solidified, and Yeon-Myeong's mind raced to understand what he was witnessing. The energy took on a grotesque form, its nature too sinister for even him to comprehend at first. Yet he knew something was terribly wrong. This was no mere demonic power. This was something ancient and forbidden. The Imugi spirit, sensing the danger, materialized beside Yeon-Myeong, its presence urgent and grave. It spoke with an authority born from knowledge of the arcane, identifying the form before them. The energy was not just a manifestation of rage. It was a Kimimoryo, a vengeful spirit born from the accumulation of immense grudges. However, this was no ordinary Kimimoryo. Its creation had been anything but natural. Unlike typical Kimimoryo, which formed over lifetimes from a singular, persistent grudge, this one had been artificially crafted. The energy had been bound with not just one, but hundreds, perhaps thousands of grudges, each one feeding into the creation of the entity. These dark forces had been sealed into the sword, making it a conduit for a far more dangerous and potent spirit than ever before. The Imugi spirit's tone darkened as it explained the implications. Such an entity could only be crafted by someone with deep, forbidden knowledge, a practitioner who dared to break the ancient taboos surrounding the creation of Kimimoryo. Only the most powerful and reckless shamans had ever dared to force the creation of such a spirit, and even they had been forbidden from doing so. Yet here it was, a direct violation of natural law, an affront to the heavens themselves. The spirit's origins were undeniable. Someone within the demon sect was continuing the forbidden shamanic practices, unbound by the rules that had kept the balance. Whoever had created this abomination had gone to great lengths, willing to sacrifice any moral or spiritual constraint to harness such destructive power. The gravity of the situation was now clear to Yeon-Myeong. The power they faced was not only monstrous but defied the very order of the world itself.